Hey, I'm Sam. Welcome to Brickwall Pictures. Today I'm doing a Keanu Reeves tier list. I'm a huge fan of Keanu Reeves. I've done tier lists for many other, mostly filmmakers, but also some martial artists and a couple other actors. So check the description for a playlist of all my tier lists. We have 23 different Keanu Reeves movies here. Actually, 22 Keanu Reeves movies and one video game, because Cyberpunk 2077 is the last thing up in this randomized order. When I do director tier lists, I try to be pretty comprehensive with their body of work, encompassing most of the movies, or at least all their major ones. With actors, it's a little harder to get like everything they've done, because actors tend to be in a lot more movies than filmmakers make movies. So with Keanu Reeves, here's just a big old sample size, and he's got enough other movies that I could maybe do a part 2 in the future. But first is Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. This is a breakout role for him. It's not an archetype that Keanu Reeves stuck to throughout his career. He was kind of being pigeonholed early on in his career as like the dumb guy, the idiot, like surfer guy, or like the stoner archetype. Even though Bill and Ted, I don't think they're like stoners, but they act very stonery. The Bill and Ted movies are fun. I don't have any nostalgia for them. I only saw all of them recently. I only saw the first two. I saw them before the new Face the Music came out, but not much before, like after it was announced and all that. So I don't have any like nostalgia for them. I don't have any rose-tinted glasses on for the Bill and Ted movies. I think they're enjoyable. They are like aggressively stupid though. There's a lot of jokes that are just dumb. Not like funny dumb, but just kind of dumb. But there's also a lot of funny stuff. I think Keanu Reeves is really good in it. So is Alex Winter. The two of them are really funny, especially together. They have great chemistry. There's some really memorable jokes, but I don't think they're great. Honestly, I might go like C with them, and that's keeping in mind that C is like pretty good. I think it's probably about a C if we're looking at like the grand spectrum of all of cinema, Some people might put them higher, some people might put them lower. John Wick Chapter 3. This is the latest John Wick movie at the time of recording. Chapter 4 might be out by the time this video comes out. I tend to record these like way in advance. 3, I think the action is stellar. I think the script is quite messy in this one. I think the opening act is like flawless. When 2 ended, I said, okay, I really hope that 3 opens right where the second one left off. He's got that 1 hour head start and he's like scrounging. He's trying to best prepare himself in that 1 hour. That's what I was hoping for. I didn't think they would deliver on it, but they did. They delivered on that. The opening act of this movie, perfect. Exactly what I want. After that, it gets a little weaker. The action stays phenomenal, but it gets weaker in regards to John's character motivation, especially. Like, he makes this whole big journey to Casablanca, and he does this big ordeal where he like chops his finger off and everything, but then he just throws it away at the end, like on a whim. I don't know. So some of the character decisions don't really work for me. I also think this series is best at the gun fu stuff. The sword play is still fun, but I think this team is better with the gun stuff than they are with the sword stuff. That being said, I do think that the whole like throwing knife fight early on, that is like the highlight of the movie for me. So they are definitely good with blades as well. I think I'd give this one a B. Matrix Revolutions. This is the 3rd Matrix movie, and for a long time it was the last Matrix movie. There was talk of doing a 4th Matrix movie for years and years and years, and it seemed unlikely that it would ever happen. And then eventually it did happen, and we'll talk about that later. I can see it will be the penultimate movie in our list here. Revolutions. There are some like diehard defenders of this movie. I don't like this one. This is my least favorite of all the Matrix movies. For me, the real world stuff, like the stuff in, I guess it's Zion, has never been anywhere near as interesting to me as when they're actually like in the Matrix doing stuff. And Matrix Revolutions has, the bulk of it is real world stuff. All the action with, like the Nebuchadnezzar, the ships going through the tunnels and the like squid monsters chasing them, that doesn't do anything for me. For whatever reason, that stuff, and like they do a lot of it, it's visually impressive. Like they do more of it practically than you might expect. Like they built these big, huge ships and stuff. It looks good, sure. It just doesn't do much for me. It all feels, I don't know, like weightless or inconsequential, even though that is the stuff that should feel the most consequential, because that's the real world. They don't have, the rules of the Matrix to bolster their chances and whatnot. So it should be the most tense, the most gritty and grounded, and it just doesn't feel that way to me. I also kind of like I don't know, the story isn't engaging for me at this point in The Matrix. Like, I don't know, the romance angle isn't all that engaging to me. It's fine. It's not like bad. It's not like I can't buy Keanu Reeves and Carrie-Anne Moss together. It's not like they have like anti-chemistry or anything. I'm just not personally all that invested in it. I don't know. This one it doesn't really work so well for me. Honestly, I don't really like this movie at all. There's some fun to be had in like the ending Agent Smith fight. Like, it's a big, show-stopping action sequence, but like, I don't know, it doesn't stick out in the way that action in the other movies do. Like, even the second one, Reloaded, well, I don't think that's anywhere near as good as the first movie, but it at least has some standout action sequences. Like the chateau fight is a lot of fun. The highway, or the freeway sequence, the chase and fight and all that is incredible. Revolutions doesn't really have that. It has the big Agent Smith fight, but it doesn't stick out in the way that the Reloaded fights has. This one doesn't really do a whole lot for me. I wouldn't go F with it. I think I would go E though. I don't really consider this one a good movie. Constantine, I want to move pretty quick through Constantine. I don't really have much to say about this one. This is one of those movies that played on FX all the time, so I watched it a bunch of times that way just because there was like nothing else going on at that point in my life, I suppose. I don't think it's very good though. There's some cool design elements and some cool world building. Like the gun looks cool, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think D, maybe. 47 Ronin, this one was a little more recent. I think hopes were really high for this one based on it was like post-John Wick Keanu. It's not great though. There's an original 47 Ronin. I think it's actually a 2-part movie. I think it's like 47 Ronin Part 1 and Part 2. I haven't seen that yet, but I'm looking forward to checking that, and I would anticipate that is better than this. 47 Ronin is not very good. I don't think it's horrible, but it's pretty messy, and it seems almost a little misguided in what it's trying to do. I think I might even go E with it, actually. Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula. This is the Francis Ford Coppola one. It is not my favorite telling of the Dracula story. It's not even my second favorite telling of the Dracula story, or even my third favorite telling of the Dracula story. But I do think it's pretty good regardless. There's a lot of good Dracula movies. It is really good, though. Gary Oldman's haircut is fucking stupid. And that alone was enough to deter me from watching it for a time, if I'm being perfectly honest. That is the dumbest haircut I've ever seen. Francis Ford Coppola's direction is really good. In terms of like the production design, honestly pretty incredible, pretty staggering, I would say. Special effects work, pretty incredible. The story, it definitely takes a grand kind of operatic look at Dracula, more grand, more operatic than many of the other versions of it do. There's a lot of worthwhile stuff here. I don't love Anthony Hopkins' spin on Van Helsing. He's kind of a weak link for me in a way that Anthony Hopkins never usually is. I think it's the only Anthony Hopkins performance where I don't really like some of the choices he made. But the others are good. Winona Ryder's really good in it, I think. Gary Oldman is really good despite the stupid fucking haircut. You get over it pretty quickly. I have to say though, so Keanu Reeves gets a lot of flack from people. People like love to call him a bad actor and whatnot. I don't think he's a bad actor, but I do have to say he's bad in this movie. I don't really think it's his fault. I think he's like woefully miscast. He does not work as like a period piece actor. I don't buy Keanu Reeves centuries in the past. I just can't buy it. This movie makes him look like a bad actor when he is not a bad actor, but this movie makes him look like it. He is such a bad fit for this role. I might go as high as B for the movie on its own. I'm not sure about that. I think I'm at least going to bump it down to a C for the Keanu Reeves tier list because he is really a poor fit for that character. Okay, next is John Wick. Wonderful. It kind of like revitalized him. I feel like he hadn't had like a killer role like this in a little while. And this is a killer fucking role. He is so good in it. It makes perfect use of his particular strengths as an actor and as an action performer. The dedication he shows in the training is commendable for anyone interested in getting into action. Chad Stahelski, fantastic action director. Also the uncredited co-director was the guy who did Deadpool 2, blanking on his name right now. David Leitch is his name. I haven't really enjoyed David Leitch's movies as much, the ones that he's done solo. Chad Stahelski has done all the John Wick movies, and I think he's a great director. Something interesting is that they kind of ousted the screenwriter, I noticed. Like the first one's written by Derek Kolstad. He wrote the original script. It wasn't called John Wick, it was called Scorn, and it was a very different movie. They changed a whole lot once Chad Stahelski got involved. He had a whole lot of opinions on it. John Wick is great. I think it is better than 3. It's smaller scale. The budget was much smaller. John Wick was a lucky case of a movie breaking through in a way that it might not have. This had the potential of being one of those like straight to Redbox action movies. That's the kind of like budget scale that it was at. That's the kind of scope that it was at. Like Keanu Reeves being in this movie, it could have been one of those like dime a dozen, Liam Neeson action movies where it's like Liam Neeson and a gun, and that's the whole concept. That's the whole selling point of the movie is Liam Neeson has a gun. Oh, you like Taken, right? From years ago. You haven't been tired by the dozen other Liam Neeson with a gun movies that have come out since then. John Wick could have been like the start of that for Keanu Reeves. It could have been him entering his era of, Bruce Willis, boomer shooters, or his like Antonio Banderas has done a bunch of those lately. He's another one who like Antonio Banderas has action chops from like Desperado and whatnot, but he's been doing a lot of those like straight to red boxy kind of action movies. John Wick had the potential to become that, and luckily it didn't through some like strong world building and through top-notch action. I think John Wick is an A. I wouldn't go all the way to S with it, but it's an A for sure. Okay, next up is Man of Tai Chi. I'll keep this one quick because there is a full review for Man of Tai Chi on this channel. I reviewed it with my buddy Greg, and he did not like the movie as much as I did. He wasn't too hot on the movie. I like Man of Tai Chi a whole lot. This is the only movie that Keanu Reeves has directed. I think he did a great job with the action in particular. Obviously, Keanu's not doing the action on his own because Yuen Woo-ping, the motherfucking legend Yuen Woo-ping, is the action director for this movie. And I love that Keanu, he did this the Hong Kong way. You can tell he has such a love and respect for martial arts movies. He's not just some white guy movie star who wants to star in a kung fu movie. No, that's not what's going on here. Keanu Reeves has respect and admiration and dedication. He cares about doing it right. It feels like a classic throwback to like golden age Hong Kong action movies to me, including in some of the like cheesiness of it, like some of the like crazy whip zooms and stuff like that. Those they feel authentic, even though they are like ridiculous. Like he does the action the Hong Kong way. The movie is in Chinese, like it's not in English. And Keanu casts himself as the bad guy, not the hero. He's on the poster here, but you might not realize he's the villain. And that's fitting in line with all the great Hong Kong martial arts movies, because the white guy in the movie, the one white guy, is always the bad guy, or he's like the stuffy general who gives orders to the hero or whatever. But the white guy is usually, if there's a white guy who's a fighter in an old school kung fu movie, he's always the bad guy, like bar none. That's even still the case. Like if you watch Master Z, right? Batista is the bad guy in that when he shows up. And it's supposed to be a surprise, but like he's a white guy in the Kung Fu movie, that means he's the villain. It's not a plot twist. And I think he's a really good villain in this. Tiger Chen is such a great badass hero. I don't know how great of like an actor he is. Like it's not a role that has a whole lot of range, but he's so good in the fight scenes, so badass. And he hasn't had too many other like big starring roles like this. I think Keanu met him doing The Matrix. Like he did stunts for The Matrix. Yuen Woo-ping did The Matrix too, so that's how Keanu came into contact with him there too. I want Tiger Chen to get more big starring roles. He was in Triple Threat, and I was really hyped for that because the cast was so good. It wasn't great, but there was some fun action in it. Anyway, I already did a whole full review for Man of Tai Chi. Just go watch that video. I'm going to give it a B. Okay, Point Break. Point Break, action classic. I think it's Catherine Bigelow's best movie. I have a Catherine Bigelow tier list if you'd like to go check that out. It's really good. Keanu's great in it, and Patrick Swayze's great in it. They have such chemistry. I wish they just went all the way and made it a romance between the two of them. I think it's some clear, I think they call it queer coding, where it's like screenwriters putting in like queer stories, but they're not really allowed to because of the times. And like if they just made a gay romance between an FBI guy and a surfing bank robber, the studio wouldn't have done it. They go, oh, throw a woman in the mix, and they're both in love with the woman. They can't love each other. Two guys can't love each other in the action movie. People won't watch that. That's what these dumbass studio people are saying. It's so clearly a romance between the two of them, and it's a great romance between the two of them. The action's really good. It's a lot of fun. The stunts are crazy. It's a real adrenaline movie. It's It's really good. I talked about it in my Catherine Bigelow tier list too. I think Point Break, I'm going to give it an A. For the Keanu list especially, it's an A. Okay, Matrix Reloaded. Much better than Matrix Revolutions. Still a huge step down from the first Matrix, in my opinion. It does have those standout sequences that I mentioned earlier. But I think the plot of these movies, the plot of the series just gets so much weaker from it's like first movie works so well on its own. The other movies just kind of like make the whole lore and mythology of them worse. I'm going to give this one a D. Okay, the Lake House. This movie is just so outside my wheelhouse. I wanted to make sure I had at least one of Keanu's like rom-coms in here. Or actually, I don't think this one's a rom-com. It's just a romance movie. He did a bunch of these. I haven't seen most of them. I watched this one just to include one in here. It's so not my kind of movie. And I mean, it's not like I can't come up with a romance movie like the Before trilogy. I think are some of the finest movies made in the past, ever. I can get on board with a good romance. This does not work for me. I don't really like Sandra Bullock all that much. I don't think I've ever seen her in a movie where I wasn't a little wanting a better performance from whoever was in her role, I don't know. It just doesn't do anything for me. I'm going to give it an E. Okay, Henry's Crying. This is one that I would wager to guess is a little lesser seen than many of his other movies. The reason why I watched this movie in particular, because it was written by the same two people who wrote another really obscure movie called 44-Inch Chest that I am a huge fan of. I think that movie is extremely underrated. Those same two writers wrote Henry's Crying. Okay, actually, I'm glad I double-checked because I had that backwards. It was not from the two writers who did 44-Inch Chest. It was from the director of 44-Inch Chest, Malcolm Venville, who, other than 44-Inch Chest, I haven't found anything from him that I've really loved. It almost seems like 44-Inch Chest was a fluke, but I'll give him another shot. Anyway, that's why I watched it, was because I liked 44-Inch Chest. This movie has nothing in common with it. It's a heist movie. The premise is almost kind of clever. It's like there's the place they're trying to heist is across the street from a theater where they're doing plays, and in order to heist the place, they pretend to work in the theater so they can tunnel underneath it and go up into the bank or a jewelry store. It's been a while since I watched this one. This one's not very memorable, is the thing. Keanu Reeves is in it, and also James Caan is in it, who's another good actor. But this one, I don't know. It's just not great. It has the ingredients to make a cool heist movie, and it just doesn't really deliver on them. I wouldn't say it's awful. I'd give it a D though. The Matrix. Okay, here we go. Matrix is a classic. I think it's an easy S for most people. Much, much better than the other Matrix movies. Than all of the Matrix movies. Spoilers for the what is it called? Resurrections. Better than that one too. much, much better. I think I am going to go ahead and give it the S, taking into account how much it pounded its way into the zeitgeist and became a pop cultural touchstone, and how both innovative and influential it was on cinema moving forward. I think that needs to factor into it. So yeah, it's an S-tier movie. It's it's The Matrix. I mean, what can I say about The Matrix that hasn't been said by several people already, It's great. The action is great. It's a clever story. It's really well directed by the Wachowskis, who I haven't loved many of their other movies. But I also haven't seen Bound, which I think is them. And I haven't seen Cloud Atlas. I've noticed a lot of people defending Speed Racer retroactively, it was harshly judged. I cannot get through that movie. That movie is the antithesis of what I want to see visually in a movie. But anyway, that's not a Keanu Reeves movie. Okay, Bill and Ted Face the Music and Bogus Journeys right after. I'll grab both of these. For me, the Bill and Ted movies they're all very different from each other, but they're all very consistent in terms of quality. If I'm putting the first one in C, I'd put them all in C. I think they're all about the same. People tend to be much harsher on Bogus Journey, but with no nostalgia attached, I watched them both back to back, and I think they're about the same. They're very different. I don't want to make it sound like they're the same movie. They're extremely different. It's actually a pretty bold approach for a sequel for Bogus Journey to be as different as it is from the first one. It's not another historical romp like the first one, which I think would have been the straightforward approach. And I think maybe it would have been better received if they did that. In terms of quality, though, I think it's about the same. The sense of humor is the same. The performances are the same. There's so much cheesiness, and again, a lot of jokes that don't land. There's so much creativity in this one, though, that I respect and appreciate. Just the set design is wild in a way that the first movie did not have. I love Death. It's William Sadler, who's a great underrated character actor. He's really funny. He's the best part of this movie. My favorite joke in the whole movie is just Them playing Battleship against death, like playing board games with death, is so funny. And it's a fun, cheeky little obscure ass for the target audience reference to Ingmar Bergman's the Seventh Seal. It's such a fun reference that is like, what is it doing in this movie? So I like a lot about it, but I don't think it's like a masterpiece of cinema or anything. And I'd say the same for Face the Music. I enjoyed them about the same. Face the Music falls into some of the pitfalls of the like requels that are super saturating the cinematic landscape recently. Like this whole thing of you make a belated sequel to an old movie. That's like it's like become a cliche on its own doing that. And I am not interested in most of those. I wasn't even particularly interested in this one. Like I said, I only saw the other two relatively recently. I think this is one of the better examples of that happening, but it doesn't avoid all the pitfalls. It does that same thing that they always do where they have like the new generation of, Bill and Ted. Like in this case, it's their daughters. And I will say, I don't really like that as a trope, but the daughters were really well cast. One of them is Samara Weaving, who is great. And the other one, I don't know that actor's name, but she was really funny. She was hilarious in it. I also really liked the robot who was played by NoHo Hank from Barry. If you didn't know, that's him inside that costume. So yeah, lots of funny stuff, but again, pretty messy. I think, I'm going to put them all in C tier. They're enjoyable. Speed, great action movie. Great Dennis Hopper villain. Great Keanu Reeves role. It's him and old Sandy Bullock's again. But actually, you know what? Speed is probably the role that she bothers me the least in. That sounds mean. I don't hate her or anything. I don't think she's terrible. She just never stands out in a positive way to me. Let's put it like that. It's great action. It's a brilliant premise for an action script. The contained nature of the bus with the speedometer and all that. It is such a great core concept for an action movie. It was pitched as Die Hard on a bus, which is great. Like that's how they got the script sold, But then Speed kind of becomes a cultural touchstone like Die Hard did. It's like Speed meets blank, like it was Die Hard on a bus, It's really good. I think I'd give it an A, actually. Okay, The Neon Demon. Some people have asked for a Nicholas Winding Refn tier list. I might do that eventually, but I'm a little hesitant too because it won't be what you want to hear. I'm not as big a fan of Refn as a lot of people are. And Neon Demon is one of his fans tend to not like this one as much. And it's weirdly one of his movies that I like more than most of his other movies. I'm just not on the same wavelength as the Nicholas Winding Refn fans out there. The fact that I like Neon Demon, which most of his fans dislike, and I don't like a lot of movies that his fans love. Neon Demon I kind of liked. Part of it was because of Keanu Reeves. I thought he was so good in this role. I thought he was creepy and menacing and really effective in his supporting role. I loved Keanu Reeves in this. I thought he did such a good job in this. And I also loved, honestly, a big part of why this movie worked for me was just the soundtrack, the original Cliff Martinez score, and some of the pre-existing music that was used. This one was all about the vibes for me, which I guess is something that you can say about some of other Refn's movies, but I don't know, coasting on vibes hasn't worked for me in his other movies. But it worked for me in Neon Demon. I loved the soundtrack. This is a soundtrack that I've listened to on its own several times. And I don't know, the visuals paired with the music in this one, it kind of worked for me. I liked the Neon Demon. I still didn't love it. I'd probably give it a C, honestly. But I know a lot of people would probably put it down in F territory. A lot of people have very negative reactions to this movie. Okay, Always Be My Maybe. This one, again, not really my cup of tea necessarily, but I really enjoyed this actually. I didn't know Keanu Reeves was in it. It was actually recommended to me because they said you have to see it for Keanu Reeves because the person who recommended it knew I was a big Keanu Reeves fan. And I was like, what the fuck? I didn't even know he was in it. Keanu Reeves is in this playing himself it's essentially a cameo, but it's a big enough part, it's an extended cameo. There's an entire almost like a mini act of the movie that is built around Keanu Reeves playing himself. And he is so fucking funny in this. I think his part in this movie is funnier than any of the Bill and Ted movies, which are his most directly comedic roles. I like this movie in general. I like the two actors. I like Ali Wong. I like her stand-up too, but she's really good in this. And I like Randall Park. I think he is so funny, Randall Park, as an actor. I really enjoyed this. It worked for me on the rom-com side, too. I bought their relationship. I bought their emotion. I was invested. As far as, modern rom-coms go, this one worked for me where a lot of them don't work for me. I think I'd give it a strong B. Okay, John Wick Chapter 2. This is my favorite John Wick movie. I like it more than the first one, more than the third one. That's what my favorite John Wick movie means, if you need that spelled out in simple little baby terms. There are a couple things that don't work for me in this one. Mostly, I think it takes the world building a little too far. The first John Wick, it's like, wow, that world building is really cool, and that makes it feel unique. The second one's like, whoa, maybe rein it back on the world building a little bit. Which they did not. They went even further with it in the third one. I don't like this idea that every homeless person in New York is secretly an undercover spy working for the Bowery King. I don't like the implication that like every single person in this reality is an assassin, it would seem. I think the series is in dire need of some regular, everyday people who aren't involved in the assassin world for contrast. I think that is really lacking in these movies at this point in the series. It didn't seem like an issue in the first movie. I think that like civilians are too oblivious. I think there are too many assassins to the point where it's like, what does being an assassin even mean anymore in this reality? When everyone's an assassin, what does assassinating mean? So the world building is a step in the wrong direction, especially like with the ending where everyone freezes and it's like the power of the Continental. That's going too far, I think. Other than that, I love this movie. It's exactly what I wanted from a sequel. And I do think it's a step up from the first one. That issue is maybe significant enough to hold it back from getting the S tier. Otherwise, it would be an S tier easily. I'm tempted to just give it the S tier anyway because I think the action is so top-notch. And also, it being John Wick, it being such a good Keanu role. For the Keanu tier list, I'm going to set aside my world-building quibbles, and I'm going to give it the S tier. Actually, there's a full review for John Wick Chapter 2 on this channel that came out around the time the second movie came out. It's kind of an older review on the channel, but you can go check out that to hear my full thoughts. It's a long review. It's like an hour long, talking nonstop about John Wick Chapter 2 and breaking down all the action sequences. Okay, Between Two Ferns, the movie, I was double checking Keanu's IMDb to pull all these posters and I saw this on there. I don't even remember him being in this movie. It hasn't even been like that long since I saw this. It must have just been a little cameo role. I don't really remember him in it at all. Also, this movie is not great. The Between Two Ferns series is pretty fun, but like, it's not really a premise that works to be a movie. Works as a movie, I don't think. I don't think it's bad. There's some funny stuff in it, but I don't know. D tier, I guess. Okay, A Scanner Darkly. I talked about this on my Richard Linklater tier list. I love this movie. I think it's great. It's an animated movie, but it's done using a like rotoscope animation style, which looks awesome. I love this style of animation. I think it looks great. Keanu is excellent in it. I actually think it's kind of one of his best performances as far as like a dramatic and comedic performance goes. There's a lot going on here, and he's the main character. The whole cast is really good too. Like Robert Downey Jr. stands out as well. He's so funny in this. Also, Woody Harrelson, equally funny and memorable in his role in this movie. It's really good. Interesting story. It's adapted from a Philip K. Dick sci-fi premise. Lots of like thought-provoking ideas. It has a plot that is reliant on every character being drugged out of their fucking minds the entire movie. So it gets pretty wacky. The plot is a little bit of a mind fuck, but like in a good way, not in a way. It doesn't feel messy. It feels like, whoa, what just happened? I gotta rethink through things and reevaluate and like piece things together. I really like it. I think A Scanner Darkly is another A, actually, I would say. Okay, Matrix Resurrections. The discourse on this one has been kind of wild. People are pretty divided on it. I think it's very messy. I don't hate it, but I also don't love it. It is not both Wachowskis this time. It's only one of the Wachowski sisters, and I think it's Lana Wachowski. As well as it only being one of the two directors of the original trilogy, it's also like a completely different creative team, and that really shows. The action, I mean, if I'm being blunt, the action it kind of sucks in this one. The action is not good. I was hoping that at the very least there would be good action sequences. Even if like the story didn't work for me and whatever else, I was at least hoping the action sequences would be good. And they completely let me down. I think the action sequences are all kind of lame. They feel weightless. They don't feel creative. They feel pretty generic. They don't feel like Matrix action sequences, I don't like a lot of the special effects that they did. Keanu's whole like telepathy thing, I don't like the way that was utilized. The humor in this one, kind of cringy at points, honestly. I like Chad Stahelski's little cameo. The director of the John Wick movies is in this briefly, playing a character named Chad. Some of the meta commentary was interesting. It's definitely messy, sure, but I do think that was where the movie was the most interesting, even though I don't think it quite stuck the landing. Some of the recasting I really don't like. Replacing Hugo Weaving is such a mistake. And apparently the reason for doing that was like just scheduling conflicts. To me, Hugo Weaving is such an integral part of these movies that he is worth delaying shooting for to get Hugo Weaving in the movie. Just to go ahead and recast him, that's a big fumble, I think. Also, not using Lawrence Fishburne. Instead, they recast him with Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, who I love that guy, by the way. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I think he's one of the most like charismatic actors of his generation. I absolutely love that guy. But why recast Lawrence Fishburne? There's like no reason for it. It's like they wanted a younger Morpheus, but like why? I don't know. Everyone else is the same age. And like, I was curious, so I looked it up. I was like, oh, is there like a thematic reason for this? They didn't even ask Lawrence Fishburne. I found an interview where he's like, yeah, it was a surprise to me too. They didn't even ask me. It's like, what the fuck? It just seems really disrespectful. Yeah, I don't know. This movie, it does a lot wrong, I think. There are some interesting things at play. And it's like I appreciate what it's saying about how like these late sequels, the belated sequels and the reboot stuff. I appreciate what it's trying to say about that, about how like hollow they are and cash grabby they are. But it's like, you can't just point out all that bad shit associated with what you're doing and then still do it. It doesn't make it any better to be like, oh, isn't what we're doing really shitty? It's still shitty. Come on. I don't know. It points out the big pit holes of this type of movie and then still falls face first into them. E, honestly. I mean, maybe D. Maybe D. No, I'm going to go E. Okay, and last up, Cyberpunk 2077. This was one of my most anticipated games ahead of it coming out. I would say after The Last of Us Part 2, this was my number one. This was the most I've ever anticipated a game, was Cyberpunk 2077. The most like hype I had. Because I don't buy into like hype culture that much, really. I'm so glad that I waited to get it, though. I didn't like did it on release day or whatever. I held off, and I saw how broken it was on release. So I avoided playing it. I waited like 2 full years after this thing came out until it was finally fixed. The state that this game was released in, completely unacceptable. F tier. Easy F tier, the way that it was released in. But 2 years later, now like 3 years later, after fixing, after patches, after they finished the game, it is now in a much better state. And I'd probably give it an A tier, but I got to at least deduct 1 tier for how unacceptable of a state it was released in. So I'm going to leave it in B. I want to clarify that the whole Cyberpunk debacle, I think it's a pretty clear-cut case of the money people fucking over the creative people. You know, the writers and the artists and people who are actually making the game, putting their heart and soul into making something great, getting totally shafted by the money people at the company going, we gotta put it out, we gotta rush out this unfinished project purely for the financial end of things. I think it's a sorry state of affairs that's how the video game industry works and how the film industry works too, for the most part. I think the story is great. I think the writers at CD Projekt Red are excellent writers, and the artists, like the production design elements. The game looks phenomenal on the like current gen consoles, not the like PS4 or whatever. My playthrough wasn't super glitchy. I had like a couple of crashes, not many, and there were some. The car radio like never worked. But other than that, it wasn't too bad. There was like one mission that I couldn't do because of a glitch, but it was like one of the little side missions. There was occasionally like, texturing, like pop-in issues and whatnot. But the like game-breaking, T-posing, all that shit was sorted by the time I played it. Keanu is great in this. I love that there's a Keanu Reeves video game where he is such a substantial part of it. I thought, like a lot of people thought, that he might be like a little tiny piece of it. Like, Giancarlo Esposito in Far Cry 6, was it? where like they try to make it look like he's a big part, but like he's obviously like a tiny little piece of it. You know, he's like barely in it. I thought that might be like Keanu and as Johnny Silverhand in Cyberpunk, but he's like a main character with a really complex, like a really complicated character, and it's not like leaning into like the mythos of Keanu Reeves. He's Johnny Silverhand. He's a character who like the guy's a real piece of shit at points, but then you also like love him at other points. It's a great character, a great like arc that he goes through, and the fact that like I don't know, getting to play as him. There's like when you first take control of him, and they know it's gonna be like catharsis overload. They give you like the most powerful gun in the game, where it's like explosive, like handgun rounds or whatever. It was so cool. It was such a cinematic moment in the video game. It put such a big dumb smile on my face playing as Keanu Reeves in a video game that lived up to it finally. Like there have been a couple of John Wick video games, but I have not liked any of them. Like that Hex game, that like puzzle game or whatever, you know. There have been Matrix video games, but I don't think any of those were very good. Like Enter the Matrix kind of sucked. Path of Neo was janky as all hell. Finally delivered on getting to play as Keanu Reeves in a video game, which I've always wanted. So yeah, as you can see, his filmography really runs the full gamut here. He's got stuff in every tier except for F. And I don't know, you could maybe make a case that some of these could go in F. I mean, I don't think so. I wouldn't give any of these the F. It's not even like borderline for me. If anything, they're more borderline toward the D than they are toward the F. But overall, yeah, super strong filmography from Mr. Keanu Reeves. And yeah, big fan of the guy. Extremely excited to check out John Wick Chapter 4. Anyway, thanks for watching. Check out my other tier list, subscribe right here, Brickwell Pictures, and I'll see you next time. So long.